You can now combine the capabilities of Optic and Postman to learn the OpenAPI description for any API. This makes it easy to document APIs without being an OpenAPI expert. And even if you are an OpenAPI expert, now you can save a lot of time on the tedious work that's better left to automation. Foursquare has a great Postman collection, so we're going to use that for the demo. To get started, just run API intercept api.foursquare.com. And this opens up an Optic instance. I'm going to switch back over to Postman and configure the Postman proxy. That's preferences proxy. And then I have to set it to localhost 3333. The full instructions are in the Optic docs. Now that I'm in Postman, I can run any of these requests as I normally would. So here's the request for getting a venue's hours. I get my response here in Postman. But because I've configured the Optic proxy, it's also watching how the API behaves. You can see it now says one undocumented URL. So I'll click review. I'll click on this request and I'll give it a path. V2 venues, venue ID, hours. Optic asked me to name it, so I'll do get hours by venue. And then I can build out the entire OpenAPI spec just by going through and approving Optic's recommendations. So Optic has seen a real example of traffic from Postman, and it's inferring the specification of the API for me automatically by using the data. I'll hit approve here. Optic's also noticed that sometimes includes today can be optional, so it's telling me that I should make this optional. I can apply these changes, and now I've documented my first endpoint in the Postman API. I'll come back and do a few more. This is for getting the similar venues, so I'll send this request. I'll head back into Optic, and we can do the same thing again. This will be V2s, venues, venue ID, and then similar. And I'll call this get similar venues. Again, as I go through and hit approve, Optic's writing my OpenAPI spec. And I can also make this a little nicer, so I can start to name things in the specification. So this looks like a list of venues. So I'll change the name of that to venues. Now I have a concept name venues that can be reused throughout the API spec. Looks like venue page is optional sometimes, so Optic's seen enough examples to tell me that. And it looks like sometimes there's a field called delivery that can also be optional. So I go approve all that, and now I have a concept called venues. I have these two endpoints documented, and if I really want to take it to the next level, I can run the entire collection and then go through and document the rest of the behavior. So again, this is using real behavior of the API that I observe using Postman while I go through and explore the entire API. And instead of having to write the OpenAPI file manually, Optic is giving me the tools to quickly take my learnings and turn that into an API specification. So now let's see what this actually looks like in OpenAPI. I'm going to switch over to the terminal again. I'll shut off the intercept task, and I'll run API generate OAS, and then I'll tell it I want the OAS file for the host, api.foursquare.com. And I'll do it as YAML. So Optic goes through and generates that OpenAPI file for me. And now I can go open this directory, find the OpenAPI file, and bring it into Visual Studio Code. And just like that, in only a few minutes, I've documented a pretty substantial part of Foursquare's API without having to write a single line of OpenAPI manually. This tooling is easy to use. You can use it for your own APIs, for third-party APIs, or any API that you want to understand a little bit better. Optic is an open source tool that makes it easy to document and test your APIs. You can find us on useoptic.com, on our GitHub, opticdev/optic, or on Twitter, we're at useoptic. Thanks so much, and I hope this tool saves you guys a lot of time as you're learning about the contracts for different APIs. Thank you.